Hi, Les McKeown here with Predictable Success, and today I want to talk about a specific topic, a very niche topic if you will, and it's why solo consultants, and particularly those who have a strong intellectual property or IP, often fail to scale their business despite their best attempts to do so. And I want to share with you the dynamic that I've seen happen most frequently in that situation and what the optimum resolution of that is. First of all, let's just refresh our memories about the predictable success life cycle. All organizations grow, all organizations can decline, but growing to the point of predictable success isn't something that happens just by accident. It actually occurs because of four underlying key management roles that develop over the course of every organization's life. And I want to talk to you about those management roles for just a moment, and then I want to share with you something specific that happens for the solo consultant. So here's what usually happens, excuse me. In the first stage, the early struggle stage, that's when the very first management style, and we probably wouldn't even call it that at this point, it's not a management style, it's just what it happens to be, tends to be dominated by a sort of visionary mindset. Somebody who's going to start their own business clearly is going to have a very visionary approach to what they're trying to do. They're looking to build something over the medium and long term. They're not trying to just do something and cash in. And so that visionary approach, that entrepreneurial, charismatic, sometimes not always charismatic, forward-looking, long-term, strategic thinker is the first of the four management styles to emerge. But the visionary on his or her own can't build a substantial business. They really need, in order to break through into fun, to have someone, another person, often, sometimes it's themselves working in a sort of a schizoid way, often it's employees, but they've got to have somebody bringing what I call the operator style. That's the person who just goes and gets things done. These two work really well together. The visionary is the ideas, comes in on Monday, knows what he or she wants to do. The operator gets out there and makes it happen. And together, they're the people that build a business through fun. Now, as you'll know from a lot of our earlier work, what then happens is the business will hit a stage called whitewater. Fun has in itself the very seeds of hitting whitewater because the business gets over complex. And at some point, eventually, the visionary, the operator, the founder-owner group will realize that they've got to bring in a series of systems and processes, minimum systems and processes, to get the business through to predictable success. That's when the processor, the third role, comes into play. The problem is that these three roles taken together actually compete against each other. These are three agenda-driven roles, if you will. These are three management styles that tend to fight amongst each other. The visionary wants to be free, wants to be able to brainstorm. The processor wants systems and meetings. The operator's caught in the middle. They just want to get out and get stuff done. And to make it to predictable success and stay there, a fourth management style develops. It's not usually brought in from the outside. It's usually developed, often out of the visionary. And that's the style I call the synergist. That's a management style that says, look, we have to get along here. We have to have systems and processes on the one hand. We've got to listen to our processors and work with them and what they want to do. And on the other hand, we've got to have the vision, the mentality that looks forward, strategic planning, etc. And so those four management roles together are what makes for locking a business into predictable success. But let's take a look at the very specific version of this when we're talking about a solo consultant starting their business, particularly one with a strong IP or intellectual property. Unlike many other groups, solo consultants are a strange mix of the visionary style on the one hand and the processor style on the other. That's a very unusual mix. Normally, people who are at the opposing corners don't really mix that well. Processors don't not to get on very well with visionaries. Operators don't get on that well with the synergists. But the reason why people get into consulting is because they have the visionary mindset that sees how to make things better, sees how to do things in a different way, but also likes to put that into a system, develop something that they can take to their client base. And so often the visionary has got a processor mindset, and they don't necessarily want to be the operators. So a travel consultant doesn't necessarily want to run a travel agency. They don't want to be the operator in that way. They want to bring the visionary and the process side of things and show other travel agents how to do it better. So what happens is the visionary starts their business, solo consultant, and they develop some intellectual property. That's the processor side in them, puts together a system, a process, a way of developing what they're trying to teach. And they then find themselves acting as the operator as well, because guess who's out there consulting with the clients? Guess who's out there standing on the stage teaching what they've got to teach? Guess who's written the book and whose name is on the front of the book? So they act as and are seen to be the operators as well. The interesting part of this dynamic is that it's a false perception. If what they're trying to do, if what you're trying to do is to build a scalable business, what you need to see is that you're not operating as the processor or the operator for your business. You're doing a different thing. You're acting as the visionary and the processor and the operator in terms of developing and protecting your IP. What you're doing is you're bringing that processor mentality to developing your intellectual property. You're out there acting as an operator in order to develop your intellectual property. That's different from building the business. And a lot of solo consultants get stuck because this is what they spend their time doing. They're not really building their business. Sure, they're acting as a visionary, as a processor, as an operator, but that's in developing the IP, which is not the business. The business is the exploitation of the IP. Exploiting your IP is very different from developing it. And what's the answer? Well, it's pretty simple and probably intuitive for you by now, having demonstrated what I just have. The reality is that you, as a solo consultant or as the founder owner of a small consulting practice, you need to find your operator or operators, your processor or processors. You probably even need to develop a synergist in the organization for developing the business, for building the business. The work that you're doing seems to mirror in a small way what needs to happen to build a business, but really you have to see that as building your IP, not building the business. And you need, in order to scale a large consulting business, to accept that what you're doing is really just the visionary role when it comes to the business. You're acting as a visionary, as you should do. And you need to go out and find yourself a high quality operator, somebody who takes what you say, what you're showing, your strategy, your vision, and delivers it in scale. They won't have your charisma. They won't have what you bring to bear in terms of knowledge of the IP, but they will develop an ability to emulate and scale that over time. You need to bring in, at the right point, processors who will put systems and processes in place in the business to scale it. Not in your IP, but in your business. And eventually, as the business grows and becomes more complex, either you or someone else on that senior team is going to need to develop into being the synergist as well, who brings those three agenda setting management styles together and gets them to work in cohesion. So there you have it. I hope that's been helpful for you. Distinguish between what you're doing to develop your IP and what you're doing to develop your business. You're probably limiting the latter by focusing so much on the former.